Wrath and anger are hateful things, yet the sinner hugs them tight. The vengeful will suffer the Lord's vengeance, for he remembers their sins in detail. Forgive your neighbor's injustice, then when you pray, your own sins will be forgiven. So begins today's first reading from the book of Sirach. It makes us pause. It makes me pause. Wrath and anger are hateful things. And how much now do we see videos online of angry, even violent people, or see things that people say online? You could call it an epidemic. Forgive your neighbor's injustice, then when you pray, your own sins will be forgiven. Perhaps we've been the victim personally of some injustice by family, friends, or coworkers. Or how often do we see or read about injustice in the world, in politics, even in the church? All these things are distressing, but we can't allow ourselves to be resentful like so many other people around us. And finally, the reading even goes on to hammer the point home. Can anyone nourish anger against another and expect healing from the Lord? Did you notice that word, nourish? It speaks of, feeding our anger. Now, we can't control our feelings. If we are hurt in some way, we're going to feel angry. The key is not to dwell on it, not to nourish it. Jesus gives us a similar message in the gospel with the story of the servant who is forgiven a large debt by his master and then turns around and does not forgive a small debt from a fellow servant. Imagine if you were one of the other servants who witnessed all this happening. It would offend your sense of justice. I think that's one of the points that Jesus had of giving this story, that it allows us, if we think of one of the other servants witnessing this, we can see how God looks upon unforgiveness. Then the end of the story is chilling. Then in anger, his master handed him over to the torturers until he should pay back the whole debt. So will my heavenly Father do to you, unless each of you forgives his brother from the heart. Each of you. Do you get the feeling that God despises lack of forgiveness and hardness of heart more than other types of sins? I mean, all serious sin is bad, but it seems like God is most angry about hardness of heart and unforgiveness. And I have an idea why. Unforgiveness makes us most unlike God. It makes us most unlike God. Think of today's psalm response. The Lord is kind and merciful, slow to anger, and rich in compassion. The entire point of the Christian life is to become like God, rich in mercy and compassion. So the more hardened we are, the less like God we are. And I hate to say it, the more like the devil we are. The devil has been damned forever to hell. The demons, the angels, he was a former good angel. He rebelled against God. They're super intelligent. He knew exactly what he was doing when he rebelled. And who's going to put him in hell? It's the archangel Michael. And you may know that the name Michael means who is like God. Right? Now the devil tried to be like God in his power and glory, and we're not supposed to be like God in that way. But we are supposed to be like God in his mercy and compassion. Thankfully, we're not damned to hell forever like the devil. We have the great gift of the sacrament of penance or confession or reconciliation, whichever you want to call it. And if we are nurturing unforgiveness, that's the first step. Go to confession. And depending on how deep the hurt is, we may need to go again and again and again. And that's okay. That's okay. We may even need to talk to someone else, like a counselor or something, to put things in perspective. The important thing is not to be discouraged. Because if we're trying, then God will look upon us kindly. And even if we fall or fail, it'll make us even more dear to Him, knowing that we're trying. We want to be like St. Paul, ultimately, in this second reading. For if we live for the Lord. And if we die for the Lord. So whether we live or die, we are the Lord's.